This is a very interesting study conducted in 2020 by, who was it by? The Journal of Bioethical Inquiry. And it's called Lessons from Corporate Influence in the Opioid Epidemic Towards a Norm of Separation, which there's going to be no separation between commercial healthcare companies and healthcare unless we move towards a socialistic system and a socialistic economy, society. But this study had some incredible findings. Incredible findings. Let's just read the abstract here. This in itself is a crazy read. There is overwhelming evidence that the opioid crisis, which has cost hundreds of thousands of lives and trillions of dollars, and counting, has been created or exacerbated by webs of influence woven by several pharmaceutical companies. These webs involve health professionals, patient advocacy groups, medical professional societies, research universities, teaching hospitals, public health agencies, policymakers, and legislators. Opioid companies built these webs as part of corporate strategies of influence that were designed to expand the opioid market from cancer patients to larger groups of patients with acute or chronic pain, to increase dosage as well as opioid use, and to downplay risks of addiction and abuse, and to characterize physicians' concerns about the addiction and abuse risks as opiophobia. Wow. What a way to start your academic peer-reviewed study. There is overwhelming evidence that pharmaceutical companies and opioid manufacturers work together with all of the institutions in charge of public health to lie and say that opioids are, there's no risk of addiction, there's no risk of death, and we need to start prescribing opioids for pain and anxiety, because that will expand the market for opioids, because this is how the companies or the people in charge of medicine and healthcare look at healthcare as a way to make money, as a giant market for which they can sell their commercial products, their commercially marketed medicine. So they purposefully lied and smeared physicians who were concerned about the addictive properties of opioids and increasing prescriptions of opioids as opiophobic. Y'all, who out there doesn't think that wokeism or woke imperialism or corporations utilizing wokeism is a thing? Has there ever been more proof? They just throw the word phobia, on the end of opioids and use it to smear people. It's the same as being homophobic. It's the same as being racist. You're just racist towards fentanyl. You're opiophobic. And what's interesting about this, like right now, I'm studying healthcare administration in the university. Right, that is what I'm doing, getting a master's degree or doing a program in healthcare administration. And I feel like a lot of my classmates are socialists and or are moving towards that direction and demanding, a more socialistic, more publicly owned healthcare system. And I'd like to think that I have had some influence on them in our discussions. But either way, the class itself is very corporate. One of my professors, and he's a nice guy, but he's worked for USAID and a lot of these, arms of the U.S. State Department, or arms of Western pharmaceutical corporations. So the university itself, the education system itself, is heavily influenced by pharmaceutical companies, by these corporations making money off the healthcare system. So you see here, it's patient advocacy groups, medical professional societies, universities, teaching hospitals, public health agencies. These organizations owned by the government that are technically public. And we were talking about earlier how public institutions are generally better than private ones. But under capitalism, these public institutions are still influenced heavily by the private sector, by corporations. So at the core of this, at the core of the opioid crisis, you have the opioid manufacturers and pharmaceutical companies making tons and tons of money by producing and selling opioids. And they realized they could expand the market, and so they influenced universities and teaching hospitals and public health agencies like the World Health Organization. policymakers, legislators, politicians, and all these different sectors that are only loosely related to healthcare, right? Or some of them are healthcare organizations, but they're public. They're not making money off producing opioids, but they're influenced by these giant corporations who are. So at the core of it, you have the production of a commodity, which is sold on a market for surplus value. But then you have these pharmaceutical companies taking the massive totals of surplus value that they're making and using it to influence everything. And this is how the insurance industry and the pharmaceutical industry and the hospital systems and the ambulance companies, or why they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars lobbying the government every single year, or marketing their products, or influencing universities. Because they're making a whole bunch of surplus value off of selling medicine to people, but then they have to invest a bunch of surplus value in lobbying the government and controlling every aspect of society, so that that never changes, right? So no one ever says, hey, these guys purposefully got us addicted to opioids when they knew that it was killing us because they thought it would make them a bunch of money. So the companies who are in charge of healthcare, whether public or private, are prioritizing their profits over human life, to the point where they'll literally lie about a product that is killing people so that they can keep selling it and expand the market for it and make money. They'll lie so that they can sell that product on an even larger scale, to the point now where there are over 60,000 deaths a year due to opioid overdose. And these are people who sprained their ankle, or who were depressed and dealing with anxiety, and they went into the doctor for help. And because the pharmaceutical industries are in charge of the healthcare system, rather than getting help, those people were fed opioids, and now they have a much bigger problem on their hand. And sadly, what happens is a lot of these people who get hooked on opioids because it's prescribed by a doctor for pain or whatever, eventually they don't have the money to afford these because they are a consumer product being sold on a market. They are expensive. You're not only paying for the pill, you're also paying the profits of these multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical companies. And you're also paying for them to lobby the government so they can continue to get people addicted to this shit. So they're expensive. People run out of money. And then the closest thing to opioids, the pills that you get at the pharmacy, heroin. So now you have an incredible amount of deaths from fentanyl and an incredible amount of deaths from heroin that have stemmed from the healthcare system that's supposed to protect public health. But because of capitalism, you have a dialectical inversion where the people in charge of public health are literally killing people, destroying public health because it makes them money. So capitalism has taken our healthcare system and completely inverted it. It now does the opposite of its purpose, the opposite of what it was designed to do. That's what we call a dialectical inversion, and it completely comes about from the commercialization of medicine. Right? This didn't used to be the case with pharmaceutical companies, and I'm giving y'all a little bit of a sneak peek. I was talking earlier about all the books that we've done. This is, sorry, behind me. There it is. The Journal of American Socialist Studies. I don't know if you can see it up there. One of the first journals we did. Right now, I'm giving you all a bit of a sneak peek into my my article for the second Journal of American Socialist Studies, which we've been working on for a while. It won't be long before we release the Journal of American Socialist Studies too. But right now, y'all are getting a little bit of a sneak peek into that. And that's where I've come up with a lot of this research. But the first pharmaceutical company came about in 1885. And this was just 3 years after the death of Marx, when Engels was still alive and still writing. So the Industrial Revolution had happened, the bulk of it, and capitalism was spreading itself all across the globe, really evolving into the stage of capitalist imperialism that Lenin would describe and analyze in 1917. But capitalism was really it was prominent in Europe. It had become the dominant mode of production in Europe completely. People had moved into the cities. A lot of the peasants had been pushed into the cities looking for work. Industry had overtaken the peasant agricultural production under feudalism that had preceded it. You had a fully, not a fully developed, because capitalism's always developing, but a prominent capitalist mode of production. Commodity production was the main form of production being carried out. Again, there weren't that many peasants anymore. So 3 years after Marx's death, after he writes Capital Volumes 1, 2, and 3 and analyzes this new capitalist mode of production that's come about, in 1885, you have the first commercial pharmaceutical company. So with the evolution of capitalism and the development of commodity production to its highest stage, you have the pharmaceutical industry and the commodification of healthcare, the commercialization of medicine. So before this, it didn't work the same way. But then, as commodity production is developing, as capitalism becomes the dominant system, as all the most powerful people in society are manufacturing capitalists who own factories, which are producing goods to be sold at market, you have these pharmaceutical industries or these capitalists who say, we could create a market for healthcare. Everybody needs healthcare. What if we commercialize medicine and start selling it? And you have the commodification of healthcare, as Marx is talking about, the way that capitalism commodifies everything, every aspect of society. So not only does capitalism expand itself physically, right? Not only do the capitalists use imperialism to expand their markets and expand production abroad, but they also commodify every aspect of society. So like prostitution and the drug trade are two things that follow capitalism everywhere it goes. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the drug trade and prostitution flowed over the border again in giant numbers that hadn't been seen in years. Because now you had people who couldn't just get a job with the state, with the government, who didn't have their basic needs taken care of, and they were forced to do whatever they needed to survive and feed their families. Same thing in Europe. As you have the process of enclosure, as Marx calls it, where the peasants are being pushed off their land and forced into the cities to work for the industrial capitalists, you have a huge increase in prostitution, as a bunch of women in those cities are now forced to sell themselves in order to survive. So you have the commodification of sex and the commodification of drugs that comes about with capitalism, with the development of transport and the development of commerce and trade, which allows for these giant commercial markets, allows for unlimited amounts of money to be made by producing and selling commodities. And healthcare is just one of the first things that becomes commodified. Not one of the first things, but it happens as capitalism has come to prominence, as capitalism has asserted itself and replaced feudalism as the dominant mode of production in Europe. And it's only a matter of time, right? Like, what frustrates me about healthcare administration and studying it is a lot of people realize in the industry and even in the corrupted universities that the healthcare system is broken, that it's not working, that the US pays the most for healthcare by far, for the worst health outcomes in the world, to the point where the Commonwealth Fund literally labeled the US as an outlier when calculating global averages for healthcare. Because our healthcare results were so bad, they skewed all the data when they were looking at other countries or comparing other countries together. What was I saying? Oh, and but the people in healthcare administration, in the field, don't realize that this is a product of capitalism and capitalist development and accumulation and concentration and commodification of everything that would have happened regardless, right? The first commercial pharmaceutical industry doesn't arise in 1885 by random. It arises because you have these markets that are developing, because you have capitalism that's developing, because capitalists can now make unlimited money by selling commodities. Commodity production has become dominant in human life and in producing the things we need to survive. So the commodification of the healthcare industry is just something that's going to follow naturally from that. And without attacking capitalism, we're never going to be able to attack the problems that we see in the healthcare system. We need to attack these commercial pharmaceutical companies and the fact that Healthcare is being sold as a commodity in general, right? As long as we have that, we're never going to fix these problems. So it's not that people were just evil, that these pharmaceutical companies are just bad, or that we just got unlucky and bad people took it over. And it's not that, humans can't create a healthcare system that actually works and that actually functions and that actually distributes healthcare and provides healthcare efficiently. We just have to decommodify the industry. We have to make all of healthcare public, including the ambulance systems and including the hospitals and all the providers, the pharmaceutical companies. And for those who don't know, Bernie's Medicare for All policy would pretty much just do that with insurance, right? Would do that with the industry that's literally a middleman in between you and your healthcare. It has nothing to do with actually providing healthcare. So when people say Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is a half measure, no. Medicare for All is the half measure. It's not even that. It's a fraction of what needs to be done, right? It's getting rid of this mafia-style corporate middleman that is the insurance companies and saying, okay, we'll just deal with the commodified healthcare system, rather than also, this insurance industry, which really isn't even selling healthcare. Like I said, they're just a mafia-style middleman, or a mediator who rips you off. So Medicare for All just wants to get rid of them. And, because they threw a hissy fit, and every time Bernie advocates for Medicare for All on CNN, they say, what about the health insurance industry and the companies and the shareholders? Oh, no. What about those people who have been making millions of dollars ripping you off on your health care and then taking that money and lobbying the government to make sure they don't stop them from ripping you off? Who will think of them? And Bernie goes, well, we're still going to allow them to exist, right? They're still going to allow, supplemental health insurance coverage. So you can get private health insurance in addition to your public health insurance that's provided to everyone. Like, okay, yes, I'm glad we're going to allow that middleman, evil, mafia, commercial insurance industry to still exist. Heaven forbid, we just nationalize them all and wipe them out completely. Just kidding. That's what Bernie should have said. Dark Bernie. All right, that was quite the freaking rant.